I read a confronting comment a couple of weeks ago that set me thinking. The comment stated that the faith and teaching evidenced in Jesus' ministry and relationships was a far cry from the Christianity that took shape in the later centuries, the Christianity that we, in the main, embody. Think about it. It suggested that for Jesus, the task of ministry was a radical political address to the situation of the poor and dispossessed, the marginalised and outcasts of a colonial system and a rigid religious framework. And while the Christianity that developed itself became the very system of power that shaped the lives of the people over whom the Christian emperors and bishops and religious leaders held authority. Do you recognise that? It's difficult for us, I own, it's difficult for us to draw the line between the two. We are so imbued with the Christianity that took shape from the 3rd century with its priority to hold together within the empire different groups, hold them together within one set of laws and protocols, one set of statements of faith and belief, one right way. We're heirs of this post-Jesus Christianity, and heirs of all the shifts and priorities and foci that is implied by that, including the various biblical interpretations, the different ways of excavating Jesus' life, and the theological arguments and teachings that have come down to us through the centuries. Here at St Matthew's in the city, we are trying to sort our way through all of that and see what's relevant for our times and our context. Our Christian inheritance, Western Christianity if you like, has wrapped up in it much that has been good for the development of humanity. Medical and scientific development, concern for the poor, anti-slavery, all those things, and you can name more. And much that has been terrible, stuff that with hindsight we're ashamed of. The Inquisition, the burning of women, of racism, colonialism, religious intolerance, attacks on the LGBTQI community, and economic inequity. We are finding our way through all of that, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say. The readings we heard this morning as we move into the reflective liturgical season of Lent stand as a call to remember the teachings of the pre-Christian Jesus, the Jewish man who was so concerned about the leadership of his day and the lives of the people that he lived amongst, that he was prepared to die for the reform cause, as his cousin John did. The theologian Marcus Borg reminds us that, and I quote, like other renewal movements of his day, Jesus' teaching also involved intensification of the Torah, addressing dimensions of the human psyche, dispositions, emotions, thoughts, and desires. And these internalizations had socio-political consequences. The collection of wisdom sayings that we heard in the readings this morning, including the reading from Luke, that concludes with the powerful parable about the housing construction and destruction, address these internalizations. They are also about our psyche. They would have been easily understood by Luke's audience, who were hearing the Lucan texts in the latter part of the 1st century, or for some want to say the early part of the 2nd century. They may well have heard them as an admonition, as a tell-off for being hypocritical about their faith in relation to the struggle for security, status and economic certainty that was going on as the reconstruction of the Roman Empire was happening, particularly in the redevelopment of Jerusalem and the territories of Judea and Galilee. It was a turbulent time. Certainly we can hear them as reminders of Jesus' priorities. The years that scholars tell us the writer of Sirach addresses, sometime before 180 BCE, were also turbulent times. That book the author understood as to stand also within the wisdom tradition of Israel, along with Proverbs and Job and Ecclesiastes. So it also has poetic form and addresses directly the human condition without guile, as you heard. The writer speaks directly about the stresses and temptations of living in human communities, both physical and psychological, as we would say today. Today, in our tumultuous times, we're trying to uncover the elusive man Jesus outside the framework and interpretations of the intervening centuries that have been constructed around him. Today, although we might not think they speak to us, the set texts still address us and address hypocrisy. They are perhaps more timely than we like to admit, particularly as we're only a couple of days away from Ash Wednesday. Be honest with yourself, they say. Don't say one thing and then do another. It's a bit confronting. Perhaps, and this does appeal to me, although at the moment with the, as George called it, divine comedy that's playing out globally, it causes me a problem too, but it appeals to me nevertheless. Luke's message is an invitation perhaps to be gentle in our dealings with others. After all, we're well practiced at seeing other people's blind spots, but not so good at recognizing our own. It's easy to hear others say one thing, then notice them doing another, and be highly critical. But if we dare to try looking at the situation from their place in the world, we might understand something very different about them and their circumstances from our initial judgment. We might learn something new, even if we don't agree with them. If we honestly face ourselves and the choices we make without deception or an attempt to rationalize our dealings with others and the things we do, that is, if we dare to look at ourselves without hypocrisy, we might be prepared to admit being human is fraught with difficulties for ourselves as well as for others. And we don't always get it right. And I think this applies particularly to those of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus, Christians. We might have the good grace to say, as I remember my grandmother saying, "There, but for the grace of God go I." Luke's parable, told to the community of Jesus followers, would have been heard to say something like, everyone knows it's foolish to build a house directly on a floodplain in the middle of a watercourse, because when the rain does come, and it will wash it away. Better by far, he is saying to them, to construct your life and relationships on the same ethical and socio-political foundations as Jesus. Then you will be able to stand firm alongside others and be confident about what your values and priorities are in the face of tumultuous times that we are experiencing. The wisdom sayings, the three parables comprising this morning's teaching from Luke, direct us to think about how we choose to live. That choice, we are instructed through the words Luke puts into Jesus' mouth, are expressed in the parables. It's clear. It's clear we should live without hypocrisy. We should own the log in our own eyes. We should act from the goodness of our heart. In the psychology of Jesus' day, the heart is where our psyche, values, and priorities lie. We should act from the goodness of our heart. It's all very well, he seems to be saying, to listen to the teachings of Jesus, but that counts for nothing if you do not act accordingly. And Luke 47 sums it up. I will show you what someone is like who comes to me, hears my words, and acts on them. And then he tells them the parable of the man building his house in the floodplain and laying the foundation on a rock. When trouble comes, as violent as a flood against a house built on a watercourse, that house will withstand the flood. The foundations will stand firm. But it seems so difficult to scrape away the accumulation of centuries of interpretation and teaching so we can hear Jesus. It seems so awkward and troublesome to contemplate that we might have to change our lifestyle if we don't want to be hypocritical. It seems so risky that we might have to speak and act contrary to what has come to be the right way things are in our popular culture. The right way, the only way. But unless we do consider these things, Jesus' challenging question is addressed directly to us. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do as I say? Would we rather risk the ease of hypocrisy than risk acting on the socio-political and ethical priorities of Jesus? Would we? It's a question that we must ask and answer for ourselves, each one of us. And Lent, which starts on Wednesday, is a good time to do it.